The Philippine Nurses Association of Nevada now brings you FILIPINARS, news and features about the Filipino-American nursing community and beyond. And now, here's your host, Doris Bauer.
Good evening, FILIPINARS listeners and followers. It is that time again for our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as you know, FILIPINARS is brought to you by the PNANV, or the Philippine Nurses Association of Nevada, in collaboration with PHLV Radio. I hope that you had a good 4th of July in spite of everything that's going on with this COVID pandemic that we are in. Well, we have a very good topic prepared for you today. But before we get to that, I would just like to give you an update on the two projects that the PNANV is currently holding. First, the Give to Nurses campaign, which is a collaboration of the PNANV and Massage NV. And Massage NV is giving out free vouchers for 1-hour massages for frontliners, nurse frontliners. And so we have received many applications through our website, but we have more vouchers to give than the applications that we have received. So you can still apply and request for a free massage or facial voucher. And as a reminder, this promotion ends on July 31st. So we are confirming all of the applicants, and the applicants must have taken care of COVID patients. And so those who qualify at the end of promotion, which is on July 31st, they will be issued the vouchers. So please go to our website, www.pnanv.org, and click on the Give to Nurses campaign tab to complete your application. Okay, come on, you need some free massages, right? Okay. The second project is the Masks and the Face Shield project. Masks on, shields up, protecting Nevada together. We are happy to report that we have donated 50 masks to the Las Vegas Transitional Care, 25 masks and to some lab workers, 60 masks to the residents of the staff of the Bridge, which is an assisted living facility, some masks and shields to some older members of the Christ the King Church, and 80 masks and 80 face shields to the IMC and ICU departments of Mountain View Hospital. Meals have also been provided to Mountain View, courtesy of ACDC, which is the Asian Community Development Council. Sorry. We are also happy to report that there are many monetary donors for this project. And to name a few, Mary Petita, Corazon Sorla, Romeo and Nadia Girani, Leo and Amy Belmonte, Elena Payumo, Anita Cabe, Juliet Espejo, the FAPRNA Nevada of Las Vegas, the APRN Association, the UMC Cardiac Rehab and Chest Pain Center nurses, Dina Martinez, Benji Barker, Ruby Baker, Suzette Brion, Hilda Lucas, Abby, Sambo Carl, Elizabeth Files, Derek Yohara, the NNA, Mary Bonmas, thank you, and Craig Farley of the Clark County Credit Union. And donors in kind are Gloria Kawili, Malu Kiyomalo, and the ACDC. So thank you so much to all of you. We are still continuing this project, and we will update you on the donors and the recipients of the mask and face shields as we go along in this podcast. So thank you. Okay, so today we are going to discuss and focus on social workers. As we know it, social workers help people obtain tangible services, counseling and psychotherapy with individuals, families, and groups, and helping communities and groups to provide or improve social and health services that are made available to them. We have invited 2 social workers from UMC to help us understand this important work of social workers. So please welcome to our program Ms. Tamora, Locke, and Miss Jamilla Riley. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay. So, Jamilla, say hi, Jamilla, and because you're in the same. And this is Tamara on the
Hello.
your left, my left. I don't know. Okay, so these ladies are both medical social workers. And Ms. Tamara Locke over there has worked at UMC for what, 29 years, Tamara?
29.
29 years. And you've been a social worker for 16 years, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. She obtained her undergraduate and master's at UNLV. And Tamara is an area field instructor of social work students and a liaison for UNLV. That's wonderful. That's fantastic. And she enjoys doing medical social work. And why do you want to work at the hospital again?
Well, I like helping people, and I like doing discharge planning. We do stuff a little bit different than the community social workers. And so it's very fulfilling, having a patient come in and having different injuries and being able to work that process of getting that patient either back home to their family or to a different level of care.
And a lot of different kinds of people, right?
Right, because, here in Vegas, we see everybody, and normally it's like a tourist town. And so we transition patients from here locally all the way back to China, South Africa, wherever. So it's really fulfilling, though, being able to get that patient back with their family, back to their community.
Yeah, it's hard work, eh? And Miss Jamilla Riley is a baby, 30 years young, and she's, of course, a medical social worker. She's an alumni of UNLV and UNR, right?
Yes.
And get this, Jamilla is a veteran of the U.S. Army. Wow, that's awesome. Good. You've been doing social work for how many years now?
Professionally, it's been 1 year since almost 2 years since I've had my license, but I've been working in case management and social services for 2 years. That's
great. And you enjoy working in the hospital setting as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And and why is that also? Because you both are in the hospital, right?
So for me, I like the fact that the relationship with the client is finite. It's not ongoing. So you run into way more people. You're working with them to an end goal that you and the patient both know. So it's not a forever thing with these patients. You're more so working with them to achieve a goal that you and the patient know from the beginning is to get better. Medically and health-wise. So for me, I like the finite relationship and also the diversified field that the medical health center provides to us.
Right. Yeah. UMC is awesome. Right. Okay. So can you define for us and for our listeners, what is social work and the job of social workers?
Okay, so social work is really a discipline and a profession in which we work with individuals, families, and communities to improve or enhance social functioning. So the part that social workers come in is we either play a supportive role or a leadership role in achieving social functioning for these individuals, families, and communities. So these roles can look like we could be advocates of them, we could be counselors. We come in many forms, so it's kind of a broad. This is really a broad field that really a social worker can be any of those, play any role, honestly.
Right. Do you have anything to add to that, Tamara?
Yes. And being a medical social worker, we're somewhat limited because we're working on the umbrella of making sure that the patient has a safe and secure discharge. But we also work with the community social workers so that there can be a continuum of the patient's care. So we might discharge someone to their home environment, but we will connect them with home health, and home health might have a social worker that comes in to see what other needs that might be there. And while the home health social worker is there, they might see something that they can get from the state, such as chips and different programs like that. And then they, in return, will connect the client to those services. So, you know, social workers, we just work in so many different environments.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so there are different types of social workers, right?
Right.
Correct.
Absolutely.
What are they?
Well, like we've already said, we're medical social workers, and we also have clinical social workers that we work with. And these clinical social workers in the hospital setting, those are the ones that see the patients that have, you know, that are our L2Ks. And they actually go to court on behalf of these patients and make sure that these patients get, you know, placed in the right environment, such as if they need inpatient mental health. So those are the two different types that we have at the hospital. But when you go out in the community, you'll have your elderly protective social workers. You have your social workers that work for Clark County Social Services that kind of like link patients with different services and make sure they have housing and different things like that. And then you have your child protective social workers. And we were even looking at something that I had never heard of before, where they had social workers with the NFL. And what were they called?
They were, there was the level of education that the individual had was MSW, and they were they were NFL social workers. I believe they played the role of like psychologists, and they played the role of kind of clinically seeing these players and sports players. So
tell us in national football, right?
I'm sorry.
National football?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
okay.
And it doesn't even just stop there. There's actually an association which deals with sporting and social work.
Wow.
I can't give you the acronyms because I actually forgot what it was, but there is an association that deals in sporting and social workers and how they collaborate with one another and hire.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I actually, during the October 1st, actually worked with social workers for the FBI that went out to different disasters to help, you know, empower the clients. Mm-hmm. So there's like so many different settings that, you know, you can work with as a social worker. You don't have to just limit yourself to one thing. And the good thing about it is if you start out doing medical social work and you find, hey, that's not what I like, you can always move into a different area.
Diversify. Wow.
Yeah, exactly where you want to be. And we have some social workers who only want to work with the homeless population. So, and we have forensic social workers.
Psychiatric social workers.
Right. And right now, since everything's going on with Black Lives Matter, they're even talking about having more social workers in certain states that are going out on calls that normally police officers would be taking.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow, that was an education to me. I didn't even know that. That's wonderful. So what are the main duties of a social worker?
So if we're going to put it in the context of a medical social worker, putting it in our context.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's discuss medical social worker.
Yeah. So in the context of what we do, because there's so many different social workers, we kind of want to narrow it down. So as a medical social worker, our focus in the hospital is discharge planning and making sure that clients are transitioned to the right level of care. And also if the level of care is going home, we want to make sure there's no barriers to the patient actually being rehabilitated within the home, if that's where the end goal is, to be at home. As far as community social workers, it seems social workers outside of the hospital setting typically identify social issues, and they assess individuals and families and communities, and then they kind of figure out which role they're going to play in addressing those needs that the community or individual or family needs.
And I want to say that any level of social work, any area that you work in, is all about empowering your client. You want to empower your client. You want to pull from a strengths perspective, because you want to do a holistic, you want your client to be able to function without you. And so you want to put whatever services or resources that client need, you want to make sure you have them, so that client, can take care of themselves, basically.
Right. And I see that transition because I work more in the home environment, right? And sometimes, they're discharged and these patients are not able to care for themselves. There's nobody that could help out. So that in itself is a big challenge, because sometimes when the nurse gets there, who are you? Who's helping you? Nobody. So, that then becomes a big burden. And sometimes it's not on time, but I know that social work and discharge planners and case managers work very hard, to get these patients, the help that they need before they go home. So it's really challenging job.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. Okay, so what type of education or training do y'all have as a social worker? What training do you need to have to be one? What education level?
So to become a social worker, at minimum, a licensed social worker, you need at minimum a bachelor's degree in social work. And then thereafter, once you finished your bachelor's program, you're going to go and get a licensure test in whichever state you're in. Most states have their own guidelines on how much experience you need, which is obtained while you're in your bachelor's program. But typically, you're going to get a practicum, which is an internship, where you're going to be working in the field of social work. And then you obtain those hours, and then you complete your program. Once you've completed your program and you can show proof of graduation or diplomacy, you will then go and take a test with the Board of Social Work. Once you pass that test, then you are considered a social worker.
How many years is that, roughly, become a bachelor's in social work? 3 years?
4 years.
Yeah, it's a 4-year program.
4-year program. Awesome. Yeah, I stuck. Okay,
and then after your bachelor's, if you want to become a master's level social worker, which both Jamilla and I were masters, you can accomplish that anywhere from 2 to 3 years, whether you go full-time or part-time. Okay. And then if you want to become a clinical social worker, you have to do an additional test, and is
3,000 hours.
3,000 hours.
Clinical hours.
Postgraduate.
Clinical hours, as in working in the hospital in different settings to do clinical evaluations?
Basically more mental health focused.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mental health is the focus. Wow. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's good. That's good to know, though. So can you explain the process of working up a patient who is in need of the services of a social worker? Do you have any work assessment tools to help you?
Yes. So we would call it discharge planning, like we've talked about before. And that starts time the patient arrives at the hospital. So when the patient arrives, we have different type of assessments depending on what type of patient. If you
Right.
have a patient that's a pediatric patient, you're going to use one tool, which, you know, is an assessment that's going to ask you more about who all lives in the household, you know, where does the child go to school, different things like if the child has any special needs at school, and if both parents are in the home, how many children are in the home, etc. So you're going to do an assessment like that. If it's a mom that's having a baby, you're going to do a prenatal assessment, and that's going to go with, did she get any prenatal care? You know, has there been any substance abuse issues? How many children does she have? Has there been any CPS involvement? Has she signed up for any WIC services? Will she have clothes for the child when the child is ready to be discharged? Does she have a car seat? You know, it asks essential questions about basic needs. If it's an adult patient, you know, you want to know what type of home they live in, whether it's going to be a single floor home or a 2-story home. You want to know where is their main bedroom, just in case they have to go home with any type of, you know, durable or medical equipment.
Right.
Is the home going to be equipped for that? And you also want to know what their support look like. You want to know, where do they get their medications from? Have they ever had any home health in the past? And who's going to be in the home to support them? Or do they have like a support system from family or friends? And these things are important because when we get ready to discharge the patient, we want that patient to function at the same level they did before they actually was in the hospital. So if we have a patient that comes in, and let's say the patient might already have oxygen at home or have a walker or a cane, and then you get an order that comes through, and the order said discharge patient home with O2. So instead of like reinventing the wheel, you've already assessed that patient, and you know that that patient has this equipment. So you can always let the doctor know, okay, the patient have that. We'll just verify, you know, that someone can bring in a portable tank. So your assessment is pretty much going to give you a guideline of how much help this person is going to need to get back to where they were.
Okay. And Jamilla, you work at a floor that is not, and Tamora, you work at the trauma, right? How is that? How in assessing the patient that needs help? How is that different? Is there any difference when you assess your patients?
Oh, between the two different departments? Between the two different floors, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, there's going to be a difference just based on the acuity of care. Tamora's is higher than mine, so her patients are coming in a little bit more in need of intensive care than my patients. My patients are not as I don't want to say this.
Normally, her patients, a lot of them are downgrades.
Yeah.
So they'll start out at the ICU level and then downgrade to the intermediate care level.
Okay.
And you know, it's being a nurse, and then they'll even downgrade to med-surg. Right.
So, well, that's very good. I'm glad, you know, that's pretty intense what you guys do. All right. Is there any specific patient population that needs the help of a social worker? And when and how is a referral made to you guys?
Well, where we work, you are supposed to see your patients within 24 hours.
Okay.
Each patient that comes in, unless they're discharged in less than that time, we'll see a social worker.
Okay.
Whether they need one or not. We're there to do that initial assessment just to make sure, you know, that the patient doesn't need any services.
Okay.
We see pretty much all of our patients.
So all of the patients are basically, you're going to see all of the patients, right?
Right. We're going to see all of them. And not only are we're going to see them more than one time, because we're going to do what they call multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary rounds, where we're going to round with the team and go from bed to bed to discuss the progression of the patient.
Okay.
And before the COVID, we would see the patients and provide a lot more emotional support, because we would have the families in there, and we would get to know, the families. And, yeah.
Okay.
But on a broader spectrum, social workers, the populations that need it's like all populations need social workers, to be honest. Every community needs a social worker.
Okay.
Because we're pretty much jacks of all trades.
My daughter's dog is acting up, so I'm like, anyways, okay. Let's see. What is it? So when a patient is discharged from the hospital, which professional groups and community groups do you work with the most in order to help with your patients?
I'm going to say a lot of them we work with your skilled nursing facilities, your rehabs, your long-term acute facilities, which are your LTACs. So we send, the patients that can't transition directly home, they might need one of those levels of care. Let's say if I have a patient that needs to be discharged that has like 2 or more IV antibiotics and extensive care, I know that the doctor is going to want to transition that patient to a long-term acute LTAC. So we work with all the, local LTACs. We know that we have a patient that comes in that can't do their ADLs and probably have little support at home, that patient is going to need to go to a skilled nursing facility. And also, if we have a patient that comes in that's, limited mobility,
right,
maybe don't have that much medically going on with them other than the fact that they need to get back to ambulating, and we know that we're going to call one of the local rehabs. So we, transition a lot of patients there. Sometimes we have patients that's going to go home and they're going to need IV infusions, IV antibiotics. We're going to work with the infusion companies. We work with the home health companies a lot. We work with CPS, APS. It just depends. Each client, we can't really put them in a box. They all have their own individual needs. And so we have to do critical thinking to make sure we get them connected to the next level of care so that they have a safe and secure discharge. And of course, there's times when the patient don't have any needs. That happens every now and then. When they don't have any needs, we can discharge them directly home and not have to even worry about connecting them with services.
With services, right. Yeah, that's good. That's a lot of care coordination. Any specific community groups maybe that you work with to coordinate, say, for example, the patient just needs, I don't know, companionship or somebody to work with who would stay with them, that sort of thing?
Normally what we do, if we have like a patient and something traumatic has happened and they don't have any family support, we'll work with TIPS. They're good about having volunteers that can come over and, kind of sit with the patient for that initial time to get them through whatever it is that they might be going through right then. Sometimes we have patients that need personal care attendants, and at that time, if their insurance will pay for it, we'll go ahead and get that process initiated. Sometimes we just have patients that we just need to connect with support groups.
Yeah,
they're in the community. So
so you have a lot of these resources that you have. I bet you have a list of them.
Yeah, we do. And the resources change so much. So we're always like calling on each other to be like, hey.
Networking.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So, do social workers ever participate in the legislative process? I know I didn't
Yeah.
about this, but do you guys do that too?
Oh yeah, they do.
Yeah.
There's even programs at UNLV that where they did they went to Washington and they were doing some protesting, and not protesting, I should say, advocating for some policy changes. A lot of our universities with social work programs, a lot of those programs entail getting the social worker out there and into the communities to where they are in advocating positions. And one of them at UNLV, I remember specifically, they invited students to sign up to go to Washington and advocate for some policy changes. For sure, yeah. Legislatively, we are there. We're at the table.
Good. That's good. That's good. We advocate definitely for our patients and for our professions, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So in your line of work, in what instances would you call for adult protective services or child protective services? Have you had that experience of doing this?
Oh yes. Oh yes. And
more than we would like.
I know, definitely more than we would like. But anytime we have whether it be a child or maybe it's a vulnerable population or elderly population, if we feel that that person has been harmed, automatic, we're like mandated reporters and we have to make the report. And a lot of times even the doctors, and they're mandated reporters too, but a lot of times they send that order to us so we can make the report directly. And so
yes,
we rather like err on the side of caution than to let somebody just kind of like slide through because they seem very nice or they seem this or that, because we don't really want to miss anything. So we do quite a few reports to CPS, and and we tell the people we're going to have to report this, and it's for the safety of your child, and it's better for us to report something than not report it. It's nothing personal, and sometimes it's received well and other times it's not.
You might get you in a precarious position, right? Right. So what happens then if APS or CPS shows up in the home? Have you ever been in one of those visits?
No, we have never been on one of those visits. And normally once we do that initial report, then the CPS or the APS worker, they take over from there. They'll come out to the hospital and do an assessment of the client, and they'll let us know if it's okay for us to discharge or if it's going to be a hold, or if we're going to send that child home with a different parent, or if that child's going to go to, to child haven, or if it's a adult, they'll let us know if, hey, they're going to seek guardianship, press charges, to that.
Wow.
They make all those decisions.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure you have some challenges as social workers. What would you say are your biggest challenges?
Resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Lack of.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, not every patient that we see have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so insurance is going to drive what happens to that patient once they leave our level of care. Being in a hospital setting, we're going to do the same thing for each patient, regardless of what their pay source is.
Mm-hmm.
But when that person is ready to be discharged from the hospital, if they don't have insurance, it's just hard to get them some of the services that they need. At that time, we have to depend on, hopefully, that they have family so that we can do family training and teaching. And then there's other I'm going to say, community partners out there that might be able to get that patient, a wheelchair or something donated.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the biggest challenges is, the patient lack of resources and housing, because we see a large homeless population.
Yeah. You guys see those then? You see a lot of those?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the different climates of the year. So summertime, you see a lot of homeless people. Wintertime, when it gets really cold, you'll see a lot of homeless people coming into the emergency room. So, and when they do come in, we find it hard, if they are admitted, to get them to a safe discharge afterwards, because ultimately, if they have no reason to go to a lower level of care, like a skilled nursing or a rehab, we have to send them back to a shelter, essentially, if they don't have an income.
Yeah, that's true. That is a pretty big challenge. You think this will or can be improved? Do you have any ideas of how, boosting up our resources can be done? Or
we know that it can be improved, but in order for anything to be improved, you have to have the majority of the people to care about it. And when you care about something, you write laws.
Right.
that will give you the resources that you need to improve it. We know this from, not as far as them writing laws, but from people pulling together whenever we have something big like October 1st, where you have resources coming in from everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
So that means I care. And so if the resources aren't coming in and they're not passing any laws to empower that population is just going to grow.
Yeah, that is a big challenge for us, the homeless population. And I'm so glad that, there's a legislative involvement from you guys as well. So is nursing and some other of the professions. And really, it's keeping our leaders, on their toes to make sure that, resources are provided for those in need, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, how's the COVID pandemic changed with the way you do your work? And in what ways?
Well, I think it's changed a lot. It's changed the way we do our work, because we don't really have that face-to-face connection anymore with the families. When we're talking to the families, we're talking to the families over the phone instead of just, being in that, warm environment where they can really see the empathy, rather than just we're trying to, relay it over the phone. So that's one big way it's changed. And the fact that the patients are, limited visit with their family members.
Right.
There's only like certain circumstances. And I do feel that, it's important for the family to have that involvement, and you always can't get that feel just over the phone. So I think it's more telephonic things going on than we had in the past, but it's all for the safety, safety of the patient, safety of us. And with our community liaisons, they're limited because everybody's limited as to, whether they can come in and out of the hospital facilities. They're limited even when they go to the shelters,
Right.
Because they're trying to slow down the exposure. So all the different services that the population normally, partake in is limited due to the pandemic.
Do you have anything to add to that, Jamilla?
I think the only other thing that I would add to that is The barriers for patients who are coming in and have COVID, we're finding it harder to transition them to the next level of care because they may be medically cleared even though they have COVID. There's nowhere to send them. So we're limited on that, and working in the hospital setting, it's a little difficult to hold on to patients who really don't need to be in that setting. And then you have people who really need to be in the hospital who can't get to a floor from the emergency room because we're holding people who can't necessarily social distance in their home, or they can't go to the next level of care. So that's another thing. And then same thing as Tamora said, patients, you do find that patients get more depressed in the hospital when they don't get visits from their family, which can slow down their progression in getting better. And medically, there's studies that show that people who don't get visits from their family members or feel disconnected from the support system that they had, they find that their improvement medically is not as rapid as those who do get the support from family and the visits from families.
Yeah. That is that's really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there anything that I missed that you guys do or you want to talk about with your work?
Other than, I'm sorry?
Don't let you get started, right?
Well, I mean, working in this field, you're going to run into a lot of things, and and to be a social worker, you just have to have you got to have a lot of patience. You got to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to critically think about everything that's playing a role in the decisions that you have to make on behalf of the client or with the client. You have to be able to communicate those things with the client. And sometimes you see social workers, they're like kind of in the portrayal of social workers is that we're bleeding hearts. We're like, oh, we handle everything with kitten gloves. That's not necessarily the truth behind social work. You do have to, have empathy and empathize with your clients, but you do have to give them the harsh realities of what they're dealing with and what's going on that is creating these barriers to them being independent and having that empowerment themselves. So if you are a social worker, I applaud you. Thank you for your service. Honestly.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you about your special traits and skills. So you have to have patience.
Absolutely. Because you have characters out there.
And you need to like people.
Yeah.
If you're going into social work because you think it's an easy job or you're going to get rich,
nope.
You're not going to get rich. It's not an easy job. You need to have a heart for the people and what you reach. And you need to not get burned out, because if you're working with a population and you're getting burned out, then that population is not good for you. You need to move on to a different population because you're not doing yourself any good. And if you're burned out, you're not going to empower the client and do what's best for that client. And also you have to realize that everybody that you're helping isn't going to have a level of appreciation for you. We're not enabling people, and a lot of people want you to do things for them. You're empowering people, because I've had times where I've had to go talk to a client and give them a stack of papers and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, why do I need to do that? Well,
it's your life.
This is the information, and this is what's going to help you get to the next level. I can't do it for you. You have to do it. So not everyone is going to appreciate that. But the ones who do appreciate it,
succeed.
It's succeeding. You just help them.
Yeah.
So you have to realize that you're not going to help everybody.
Yeah.
You can't take on everybody's problems. At the end of the day, we love people, but this is a job.
Yeah. you guys have different stresses as well, as other professions. Yeah, so I can only imagine. And what else was I going to ask you? Some challenges. Yeah, the skills, it's definitely very, very, difficult. So we thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.
We thank you
okay.
guys.
So what is your message to the general public regarding using the services of a social worker?
I guess my general message to people is we're here to help. You're more than welcome to visit your local community social worker. You're more than welcome to call on social workers. But in that respect, when you do call on a social worker, just ensure that you are in the process with that social worker. I guess that would be my message.
Right,
to them.
Because the social worker isn't gonna solve your problems.
Right.
The social worker is gonna help you think and help you come up with a way to solve your problems.
I see.
We don't have answers
For every individual that walks through the door.
Right. But we can help you get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we're here to empower you. But you have to be in this with us so that you can empower yourself. Yeah. So it goes back to, do I teach a man to fish
yourself.
Or give a man a fish?
Yeah, I remember that lesson.
That's a good one. Good.
We would rather teach you how to get the fish.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, ladies, thank you so much, Tamora and Jamilla, for coming to the podcast. We appreciate your time and, more importantly, the work you do. So thank you so much. I know this has been, we planned this a while in March when it was actually the month of social workers, right?
Right.
This COVID pandemic,
I know, it overshadowed us.
It came up, yeah.
Yeah, so it's thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate it. And thank you to Lloyd Gamboa, also working.
Yes.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Yes, and we want to thank you for having
Thank
us.
you for having us
on your podcast, caring enough about the social work community.
Yeah.
Let us come on and share some information. So,
absolutely. Well, this podcast is all about raising awareness of the health issues that we have out there, and also the different healthcare workers that actually help the patients and the community as a whole. So thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right.
And to our listeners, please remember that child and family social workers protect the vulnerable children and adults and support the families that are in need of assistance. Social workers help solve and cope with the problems in your everyday lives. And like Jamilla and Tamora said, they help you through the process, but you got to do your part as well, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So if you see a social worker out there, please thank them. Thank them all the time. They are a very important part of our healthcare process. Thank you for tuning in. This is Doris, your FILIPINARS host, signing off for now.
The Philippine Nurses Association of Nevada has just brought you FILIPINARS, news and features about the Filipino-American nursing community and beyond. Fridays, 7 p.m. on PHLV Radio.